Hi everybody, it's Gina. Welcome back to the Library Mouse on this deliciously warm, sunny Tuesday in New York. Hate to even go inside to talk about books, but that's what we need to do. So come on with me and we'll get to my February wrap-up, see what I read, and see what I passed on by. Okay, we're back inside. And here we are to discuss my books that I read in February. If you watched my February TBR, I had some books on there that I was going to attempt to read, and I did not. So what I've discovered doing this YouTube channel is that, like when I did my February TBR and I started to read those books, I discovered I really didn't want to read those books, and I didn't want my channel to influence what I read. I just wanted to share what I read. So that's what I'm doing. So if you go back and you're like, hey, wait a minute, you were supposed to read Mind Change. I changed my mind and I didn't read it because I just didn't. I had other books that I wound up reading instead. So first on my list is The White. So this book is a historical fiction. It's a fictionalized account of a young girl named Mary Jemison, who in 1758, she was around 16, she was kidnapped by a Shawnee raiding party that captured her family at their farm near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And I won't give away any spoilers about what happens to her family. Suffice it to say, Mary Jemison is adopted into the Seneca tribe, which is a tribe of the Iroquois Nation. And she wound up living with that tribe as a member, adopted daughter, wife of a chief, having children, and living her entire life with the Seneca tribe. I loved this book, and I don't know if I loved the writing. I love how connected I felt to Mary. It's also, I think, the fact that Mary Jemison lived in my area of New York. And when I taught fourth grade, we did a whole section on local history. Mary Jemison played a huge part in that. They call her the White Woman of the Genesee. And even if you have no connections to this area, this is a very good book, written very almost poetically. It's just an excellent book, especially if you like historical fiction. But anyway, The White was my first book, and I believe I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars. There were some parts I kind of skimmed a little bit, but it was still very good. I highly recommend this book to anyone who loves historical fiction. Okay, the second book I have been looking for and I can't find it anywhere is 1,000 White Women by Jim Fergus. So Jim Fergus took the notion that he was going to change a little bit of history. So in the 1800s, the Cheyenne Nation approached the United States government and made a proposition: 1,000 horses for 1,000 white women. And their idea was that this would bring the two cultures together because the women would have children that would be half Cheyenne and half white. The president said, absolutely not, be on your way. So the author has decided to write a book as if it had actually happened. And so this focuses on the fictional journals and writings of one woman named May Dodd. So May had been committed to an asylum by her family because she had 2 children out of wedlock and was deemed promiscuous. So they took her children and they had her committed. And May knew that the only way out of the situation was to take the government up on their offer to go out west and marry a Cheyenne warrior, and that is what she did. And so the the book is based on these fictional writings that somebody found at the end. So this is a spoiler alert. The ending is tragic. And the thing with this book, though, it did take me a while to get into it. The first time I tried to read it, I didn't. I got so far and then I stopped. But this time around, I kept reading and it was really good. And the reason why I liked it so much is you really, really do become so close to the characters and just so close to May herself. And it really is a good commentary on how women were treated, excuse my dog barking, in the 1800s. It was an excellent book. Like I said, the ending is tragic, but I did not stop thinking about these characters for a few days. Like every once in a while, I would just think about these characters. I think that's a really good sign of a good book. And so if, I'm going to try to put the picture up here, but it is 1,000 White Women by May Dodd. Definitely recommend that historical fiction book. The third book I read was an ebook. I got it from the New York Public Library. If you are a resident of New York and you don't know this, you can sign up to get a New York Public Library card on the website, and then you have access to all of the books that the New York Public Library has to offer. So I did read this book on my Kindle, and it was excellent. I gave this book a 5. I couldn't stop reading it. And usually I read 2 or 3 fiction books, or any book. I just read 2 or 3 books at one time. This book, I just kept reading it, and I didn't read any other books while I was reading it. The book is called A Woman Named Samson by Amy Harmon. Now, it is historical fiction. It is based on Deborah Samson. She was a woman who disguised herself as a man so that she could fight in the Revolutionary War. So I remember reading about her as a child. I taught about her in my social studies class to my 4th graders. And this book was a unique look through the lens of what she was thinking. Also a good commentary of women and their rights. That's taking place in the 1700s. The only thing that I did not like, and I realize that with historical fiction, the author takes liberties. I get that. But the book does have a love story interwoven into it. And the love story did not happen in Deborah's life. She actually was married to somebody else. And so I knew that. I knew that she was not married to the person that they said she was married to or had children with in the book. And so that kind of colored my reading of it a tiny bit. But it was very, very, very well written. It was an engaging story. If you just look at the fiction part of it, it was very engaging, very interesting. And if you like historical fiction, I definitely recommend A Woman Called Samson by Amy Harmon. And last but not least, yes, I only got through 4 books, and I'll tell you why. I was reading the book Superhuman by Dave Asprey. That was a nonfiction read that I had substituted instead of Mind Change. And I really spent a lot of time at first delving into this book. But when I read nonfiction, I also kind of pair it with my own research. And as I was reading this book about David Asprey, and I was reading about him, and I was listening to his podcast at the time, I kind of did not enjoy him very much. And so I had spent a lot of time reading that book, and I just decided to stop reading the book. I think you can probably get a lot of interesting information from it. And I'm not saying like it was all wrong, because I really don't know very much, but just him himself and the way the book was written, I didn't love. So I don't want to say I wasted. I took a lot of time reading that book, but I didn't finish it. Anyway, on to the last book. I read The Knitting Circle by Anne Hood. I read that because it was a book club pick for Modern Prairie. And I loved this book. It's contemporary fiction. It deals with a woman who has lost her little girl. She passed away from meningitis, and it's her journey through grief and finding herself again and realizing that life was still worth living even with her daughter's passing. And then as a side story, as she's going through her own grief, you get to meet the other women who also take up knitting as a way to get their mind off of what is happening to them. So besides the main character, you are also meeting all of the other women in the knitting circle and just the story of their lives and how women overcome things, like events that happen that are really, really difficult. And really, it's just a lovely story of love and friendship, mother-daughter relationship. I definitely this was my other 5-star book this month. I definitely recommend reading The Knitting Circle by Anne Hood. And those are the 4 books that I finished for the month of February. So I hope that you enjoyed the little synopsis of them. And I'm busy reading for the month of March. I've got a couple great mid-grade books that I've been working on. And then I've started the books that if you read or watch my last YouTube video about what I will be reading in March, I'm reading those books. So far, so good. So I will see you soon on the next video. Happy reading.